Wonderful. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. And welcome to the Jewish Museum London's Object Talk Live. My name is Shireen and the Jewish Museum London, and I'm delighted to be sharing this week's Object Talk with you all. Now, as with all our Object Talks, this week's Object Talk is linked to the theme of the week at the museum. And this week's theme is all to do with armed forces, as this week is National Armed Forces Week, a week that encourages us to stop, reflect, and remember the contributions of the armed force community. Now, at the Jewish Museum London, we cannot talk about armed forces without talking about the Jewish Military Museum. The Jewish Military Museum was founded in 1996 by Henry Morris and Ajax, the Association of Jewish ex-servicemen and women. It was founded to honour the service given by Jews to the British Armed Forces from the 18th century to the present day. In that time, over 200,000 Jewish people have served as part of the British Armed Forces. Over 6,000 Jewish people in Britain have lost their lives through the armed forces, and many more injured. It is really important that we take time to remember these stories. Now, in 2015, the British Jewish Military Museum merged with the Jewish Museum London. And ever since, we have looked after and housed the Jewish Military Museum's collection. That is over 4,000 objects, including personal stories, diary entries, uniform, badges, and photographs. And today I would like to share with you some photographs from the Military Museum's collection. So I will share my screen with you all now. Now, this is the photograph that I would like to focus on today. Here we see a black and white photograph of Jewish servicemen in World War I. Prior to World War I in England, there were about 300,000 Jewish people living in England, mainly in London, Manchester, and Leeds. Places with links to the tailoring and clothing industries, but also with rich market trading. Many of these Jewish people had migrated to England in the late 19th century or middle 17th century, most of which had fled from Russia and other Eastern European countries because of the fear of persecution. Before World War I even broke out, it is believed that about 1,000 Jewish people in England were already part of the armed forces. Many of them, which we see in this photograph over here. Now, it's really hard to find the actual figure itself of Jewish people who were serving in the armed forces at this time, due to the difficulty in army recruitment. Notably, the idea of pledging allegiance to the king upon a Christian Bible. Now, when World War I broke out, many Jewish people were divided. Some saw this as an opportunity to express their loyalty to Britain, king and country, whilst others were more skeptical, reluctant to ally with Russia, a country of which many had fled because of this fear of persecution. The reception to the British Jews in the armed forces by the rest of the British public was also divided. This period called into question the status of Jewish people in England as a minority. There was a lot of confusion regarding the state of foreign-born volunteers in the armed forces, but also non-naturalized Jews. And even many naturalized Jews were turned away upon recruitment. But this confusion was clarified on the 18th of December, 1915, when the Central Jewish Recruitment Committee was formed. Now, this committee had many roles. One, They would meet regularly with Jewish newspapers, synagogue leaders, and public figures to reflect on how best to encourage the Jewish community to sign up to war. Secondly, this committee was responsible for the religious and spiritual welfare of Jewish soldiers on the home front. They were responsible for introducing kosher food on the home front and allowing Jewish troops to take Passover off. Lastly, and very importantly, in 1917, the Central Jewish Recruitment Committee lobbied and announced the desire to create a Jewish regiment. This regiment would later be known as the Royal Fusiliers Legion, or the 38th to 40th Royal Fusiliers Legion, excuse me. Now, these stories, once again, are very important to note. And what I would love us to do is turn our attention to this picture, but specifically to one man in particular, the man in the middle. This here is Reverend Michael Adler, the first Jewish chaplain during wartime in England. Michael Adler, before the war, was the minister at the Central Synagogue in London. He was described by Captain Henry Meyer as a most unmilitary looking man with a neat auburn beard and a rather corpulent figure. When World War I broke out, it was Michael Adler's responsibility to manage religious life in UK, but also he corresponded with Jewish soldiers outside of the UK. In January 1915, however, he decided that his role would be best put to use if he served on the home front. So in January, he went to France to assess the needs of a Jewish chaplain, creating a survey, speaking to Jewish troops. He then took his findings back to the War Office, announcing that the need for a Jewish chaplain was essential, necessary, and desperate. He soon was to become this Jewish chaplain. He proposed that he would wear a Star of David at all times as a badge to make his role as senior Jewish chaplain very obvious. But what did his role entail? Now, within the Jewish Military Museum's collection, there are many objects which gives us an insight into the role of senior Jewish chaplain Michael Adler. Let's take a look. Now here we see a notice to Jewish soldiers written by Reverend Michael Adler. Here it says, all soldiers of the Jewish faith are cordially invited to write to their senior chaplain, Reverend Michael Adler. Michael Adler was responsible for the religious welfare of these Jewish troops. But not only the troops, he was also responsible for the welfare of the troops' families. Here we see he has written a letter to Lewis Nathan's wife, making her aware that her husband is in hospital, has been injured, but his progress is excellent. Furthermore, we can see a prayer book on the screen. Now, if we look very, very closely, we can see faintly written is prayer book for Jewish sailors and soldiers. This prayer book is the 4th edition and was compiled by Reverend Michael Adler himself to include all the relevant and necessary prayers for the Jewish people. Now, Reverend Michael Adler took his role very seriously, and it didn't stop at the end of World War I. After World War I was ended, he was intentional and insistent that we continue to remember the contributions of the Jewish troops and servicemen and women. Here we see a booklet. The booklet is titled The Jews of the Empire and the Great War. We see a Star of David at the front. And as we open it to the front page, we see some words. The very first words are some words quoted by Mrs. Lucas. that sums up the sentiment in the Jewish community for the First World War very well. For the Jews has heart and hand our mother England, and they both are thine today. Thine for life and thine for death, yet thine forever. I wilt thou take them as we give them, freely, gladly, England say. This book also consisted of some of the Jewish servicemen and women's names, as well as the medals that they won during their time serving in World War I. But Michael Adler did not stop there. Worried that the Jewish contribution to war would be forgotten, he created the British Jury Book of Honour, filled with pages and pages and pages of photographs of the Jewish role in World War I. Here are some of the photographs that are included in this book. On this page here, we see the Jewish VCs. And on here at the top, we see the warrant officer of the Royal Marine, who was a Jewish man. At the bottom, we see Jewish troops, and we see Michael Adler sat here. And the book continues and continues and continues with more photos of Jewish servicemen and women who fought tirelessly to represent king and country. Now, these stories are very important, and it's important that we continue to take time to remember the service of Jewish men and women who fought in World War I, World War II, and continue to serve Britain and the nation today. Now, if you would like to explore more of these stories and more of the Jewish Military Museum's collection, then please do visit our website, jewishmuseum.org.uk. If you click on collections, you will see a tab that says Jewish Military Museum. And there you could explore our online collection, personal stories, stories of war, stories of care, uniform, and the creative response to war by some of these Jewish servicemen and women. I hope you have found this talk useful and informative. And like I said, please do feel free to visit our website to find out more. Next week, you will be joined at the same time on Wednesday midday to find out more about the Jewish Museum's collection. But until then, I hope you have a very good week. Bye.